Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another Sodbusters metal detecting live stream. Wow, everybody just popped in all at once here. Jacqueline, it's good to see you here. Friend of Casey here. Dirt Bandit Outdoors, good to see you, buddy. Who else we got in here? We got Rye Patch Ron in here. We got David Alfonsetti. You guys, we got greetings from New York here. Let's see. Yeah, how you doing? Good to see you in here. Michigan, huh? All right. All right. Well, you guys, we're going to have a good show. We're going to be talking with Casey Kaiser today, and he's with Coyote Works YouTube channel. He does overlanding, treasure hunting. The guy explores like nobody's business. I've never seen anybody go at it quite as hard as he does. And he does it year round. It doesn't matter if there's a foot of snow, 2 foot of snow, and 20 below zero. The guy's out there camping and exploring. So I really enjoy his channel. But we're going to be bringing him on here in a little bit. But anyway, I wanted to give you a couple of announcements here real quick. Number one is Dan won't be with us this evening. He's got another obligation he has to be to tonight. So he'll be absent this evening. But if you guys need any metal detecting supplies, metal detectors, accessories, anything like that, feel free to contact him. Contact Dan over there at outlawmetaldetectors.com, and he'll get you taken care of there. Also, if you look down below the video here, you'll see some of my Sodbusters metal detecting merch. And so if you guys want to get any merch, it'll be available down there, and it'll take you right to my merch store. Also, my hats, I sell those from the house here. So if you need a Sodbusters metal detecting hat, you'll have to contact me at sodbustersmetaldetecting@gmail.com. So anyhow, we're waiting for Casey to jump on. I'm not sure exactly where he's at right now, but he may be tied up a little bit. I sent him a message here just a little bit ago, but I saw him posting. I know he's planning on being here, so he'll be here anytime. So, all right. Who have I missed up here in the chat? Did I miss anybody? How's everybody doing? How's the weather over there? And where'd you say you were from? Let's see here. Michigan. How's the weather in Michigan? Is it cold over there? Hey, Joe, how you doing? Good to see you here, buddy. Hollywood Joe at Copperheads. They're doing a live stream tonight too, from my understanding. Let's see here. There's a great big 24-hour live stream going on with different creators and stuff. So I didn't catch on to that until today, so I'm not sure what was going on. Warm in Las Vegas. I can imagine. That seems every time I've been to Vegas, it's always been warm. Never seen any snow there. There probably has been, though, at some point in time. Echo Trigger, good to see you here from Oregon. All right, we got Mark C. from South Carolina. And let's see here. Oh, it's been in the 30s, going to be 50 this weekend in Michigan. Yeah, we're starting to warm up here in Idaho now. As a matter of fact, I'm going on my very first metal detecting outing tomorrow for the spring. You know, it's going to be my first trip out. I've been chomping at the bit, waiting to get out there and do some hunting. And I finally found an opportunity. The weather's good. The ground's thawed out now. So for the most part anyway. But I will be hunting an 1873 ranch that I got permission on, and it's also a museum. So the thing is I will be all the items that I find will be going back to that museum, and we'll be helping them load up their museum there with the history that's in the ground there. So pretty excited about that. A couple of bucket listers I think I'll probably find on that property. It'll be hard to give them up, but you know what? It'll be an experience just to find them, and I'll get to share that with you guys. So if you're not subscribed to my Sodbusters Metal Detecting YouTube channel, please go over there and subscribe to that so you guys can keep up with these adventures as well. I'm getting some messages. Oh, I got Casey messaging me. He must be having trouble. Let me check this message here. Okay. Yeah, he's downloading Facebook right now on his iPad Pro, so he can get the link. So he's just going to be a minute or two here. That's fine. So, all right, Red Dirt Treasure Hunters. All right, John, good to see you here. I saw him here on the last live stream, and then he had something come up, and then he disappeared on me. So we'll see if we can keep him here tonight. But all right, Rob Sladen from Pleasant Hill, Missouri. Oh wow, that's where my family is from, is Missouri, Springfield. And let's see, Swift Detecting, good to see you here. All right, David Alfonsetti is saying he's been watching all of my videos. I appreciate that. I could use the watch time. That's awesome. So the way YouTube works is once you get monetized on YouTube, you don't get paid per subscriber, but you get paid for your watch time. So the more watch time I get, the better. Echo Trigger, good to see you. Metal Detecting with Randy, good to see you. All right, you guys. Casey will be on here in just a minute. We got a good show ahead of us, I think. I really enjoy watching his channel. I've got to pick his brain at some point to find out what kind of research that he does, what his methods are for research, because he gets out there and he explores places that I don't think most people know about, you know. So yeah, smash that like button, you guys. I appreciate that. Thank you. Metal Detecting with Randy. Thank you. But yeah, I every time I see one of his videos, it's like, holy cow, I want to go metal detect there. And he's just really getting out there and finding places that are, I would guess that most of them are unknown to most people. So he does a lot of neat adventures, and you guys are going to hear all about that tonight. He does overlanding, Jeep overlanding. And like I say, he does this year round. So it doesn't matter if it's hot or cold or whatever, the guy's out there. He's pretty hardcore. Yeah, Casey is amazing. Been watching him for years. Yes, he is. I've only known Casey for a few months, I guess, but when I learned about his channel and started watching that, it made me want to go overlanding. As a matter of fact, I was looking at overlanding setups for my Tacoma, and I kind of decided not to go that route just because of the setup and the takedown each time you need to move your vehicle. But for what I do need a quick setup, you know, for camping, but I need to be mobile as well. But Robert Woodbury, good to see you. All right, let's see here. I got another message from Casey. The link doesn't seem to be working. Okay, let me send him another link here. Okay. All right, let me send that to him. Okay. Let's see if that helps him out there. We'll be right with you guys. Just got to get this figured out. Technical difficulties, and I'm computer illiterate, so. All right. He's trying it again. I just sent him a new link. Let's see if he's able to hop on here. I'll try to figure this out one way or another. Never had an issue of the link not working before. I don't know. I hope there's not something going on. Sorry about that comment you saw there, guys. I blocked him. We need to keep this chat polite. Oh, there he is. I see Casey. Okay. Hey there. How you doing, Casey?
Not bad. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. Not a problem. I've been getting to know people here, and we've got Jacqueline.
Oh, Jackie's on. Nice. Hi,
yep.
Jackie.
And let's see here. We got, no, there's a few people here. We got Brian's on here with Dirt Bandit Outdoors. He's got a good YouTube channel as well. Yeah, we got a few people here that you know. David Alfonsetti, that's I'm not sure if that's one of my regular viewers right there. So, but anyway, well, Casey, how was your day today?
Oh man, it's been a busy week, but I'm glad it's the weekend.
Yeah. Now you work for the city as well, don't you?
I do. Yeah, that's my day job, as I work in kind of city planning and projects, and so kind of everything from street projects to park projects to developments to all that kind of stuff. So pretty typical kind of white collar office sort of environment. And
yeah, you bet. Well, it seems to me. Well, thank you, Martin. I appreciate that. Martin sent a super chat there. He says, "Hope it's a great show again. Cape Cod is watching." That's awesome. Thank you. Appreciate your support. Yeah. Casey, you and I met, I guess, probably about 2-3 months ago.
Yeah.
We had Brian on the live stream, and then he introduced us. And as soon as we got off the live stream, I, went upstairs and got on YouTube and pulled up Coyote Works and started watching your videos, and I found myself staying up all night. So you and I need to have us a talk. I'm losing sleep over all this.
Very cool. Very cool.
But no, I've taken a real interest in your channel. You're out there exploring things that I think most people probably don't know about. It appears that you have really good research skills, and I just, how did you get started in all this? When did you start doing overlanding?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I just kind of grew up doing it. And of course, when I was young, it was just you throw your cot and your sleeping bag in the back of the pickup truck and you head out into the desert and explore. And that was just kind of how we did things. Of course, when I was real young growing up, I grew up in a family that was relatively poor, so more often than not, our version of family vacations oftentimes was just camping trips into the local woods and forests and hunting and things like that. So when I was growing up, I think one time we went to Disneyland. I think that was a really big deal. Like my family saved up for a long time to take us kids to Disneyland, but other than that, it was usually just camping trips. It was duck hunting. It was deer hunting trips. It was, those kinds of things. So I just grew up with sort of a love for the woods. And then we lived out in the country, and I remember finding, my first couple of arrowheads when I was young. And then somewhere along the way, when I got old enough to start reading books about the frontier and Daniel Boone and everything, I started kind of putting pieces together and matching things that I found out in the woods with stuff I was reading about in books. And of course, at that time, it was just sort of conceptual things. I'd read stories about Native American Indian battles or whatever, and then I'd find an arrowhead and I'd say, oh, I'd realize that came from something like that potentially. Yeah. Or then I kind of started honing down and really learning that the area where I lived, which was Central Oregon, had a lot of that same history that I was seeing in Western movies and stuff. We had the Paiutes and we had the the unfortunate eradication of the native tribes, and we had the cavalry exploration and the land grab, and we had sodbusters and homesteaders and, you know, all of that stuff. And so when I kind of started realizing that all this cool stuff that I was reading about in books and seeing on TV, I could find on the ground, that's kind of where it all began. And, you know, I always say I'm just a redneck at heart, just a country boy. I just grew up kicking around in the backcountry. As early as I can remember, I was kicking around in the woods with a backpack and a 22 rifle, you know, and it's just kind of always been something I've loved.
Sure. No, you and I got a lot in common there, because from the time I was 8 years old, I had a little Stevens single shot 22 rifle, little junior model, or youth model, I mean. And while other kids were, you know, going to school, you know, they go to the arcade or something after school, I'd go home and I'd fill every single pocket loaded up with 22 shells, and I was out in the mountains. I'd take off hiking. And that was the way I grew up too. Just, you know, I was always out there in the woods. I didn't have interest in arcades or anything like that. It was always out in the mountains for me.
Yeah, no, same deal here. Yeah, it was all. Most of my friends growing up were imaginary, and you know, from time to time we'd have a stray dog that would pal around with me out in the woods for, you know, however long it lasted around the place. But yeah, it was just wandering around in the hills, and I've never really grown out of that. You know, to this day, I just, last weekend I had a day where I didn't really have anything else going. I grabbed my 22 rifle and went out and hiked a canyon and just did a little bit of exploring, and it's just what I like to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, you say you had imaginary friends back then. You know, I still do. I still imagine that I have friends. You know?
I do the same thing. You spend enough time out in the woods alone, and you end up talking to yourself or your imaginary friends a lot while you're out there.
Yeah, you bet. But anyway, yeah. So how long have you had the YouTube channel now?
You know, I think it's like 8 years or 9 years or something like that now. Wow. that I've had the YouTube channel. And I was thinking, the other part of your question was kind of about the overlanding thing. So, you know, I remember when I was young and before I could drive away from the property and everything, you know, it was just however far I could explore on foot with my rifle. And then when I got old enough to have a driver's license, I had an old Dodge pickup on the property that, you know, I could drive. And so then I'd start throwing, you know, little gear in the back of it and going camping. And I think for me, the overlanding thing is maybe the interesting thing to some people is I kind of came into overlanding sort of backwards. Like I know a lot of people, like they get into overlanding. That's their draw into the woods or the outdoors. But for me, it's always been the history and the treasure hunting and the relic hunting and everything. And then the overlanding has more just been the places that I want to go are far enough away and they're remote enough that a lot of times it just makes sense for me to spend the night or to camp along the way. But really, you know, rarely ever for me do I just go camping in the traditional sense that I pick a place on the map that I'm going to go and stay at for a couple of days. So like the spirit of overlanding, in my mind, you know, overlanding was a word back in the day that used to describe how people got from point A to point B. If you wanted to go from New York to the gold fields in San Francisco, way back, you know, in the mid 1800s, you had two choices. You could travel overland or by sea. And if you went by sea, that meant you were going to sail all the way around the Cape of South America and come all the way up the western coast of the United States to San Francisco. Or you were going to travel overland, which meant you were going to go by wagon or horse or mule or something, and you were going to go straight across the country. You're going to cross the Continental Divide up over the Rocky Mountains, and
so that's actually a historical term then.
Right. It's
I'll be darned, I didn't know that.
Term. And the spirit of the term is that overland is a mode of travel, not necessarily related to a destination, right? So to me, you know, that's where overlanding kind of ties into what I do is I'm usually traveling to places that I want to explore, search for relics, learn more about. And the overlanding is just how I subsist along the way of doing that. So I rarely ever stay in one place more than one night. I'm usually exploring all day long and hunting for treasures or whatever. And then
Yeah.
at dark time, I have to have a spot to eat dinner and sleep. So I park my Jeep, stand up my rooftop tent, and do that. Wake up in the morning, throw a bowl of oatmeal together and a couple of sausages, and then pack my camp up and roll on to the next place that I'm exploring. Is usually how I do it.
Yeah, you bet. It's interesting watching you. I see the equipment that you're using. As a matter of fact, it inspired me. I mean, because this year especially, I want to spend more time getting out. You know, I go to ghost towns and stuff like that, and some of them they're really too far away to have a good day's hunt and then travel, you know, to and from. So it's better
Yeah,
if I can just go and set up a camp and stay a couple days, 2, 3 days, and hunt, metal detect, you know.
yeah,
So I was looking at your setup and I thought, wow, that's awesome, you know. And I thought about getting into, you know, getting a setup for my pickup, but then I realized my mobility was kind of limited without taking camp down and stuff. So I kind of changed my thought on that part of it a little bit.
hmm
But uh, every time I watch your videos, it's like, oh man, I want to go metal detect there. I want to go
yeah.
metal detect there. Holy cow! And so, how long have you? I mean, you metal detect some of these areas, don't you?
I do, yeah, yeah. It's not necessarily. It's not something I do every time or all the time. It's more metal detecting for me has been more like one more of a variety of different tools that I use to dig up more history or to discover more history about a site. You know,
Sure.
sometimes it's metal detecting, sometimes it's sifting through the ashes and the charcoal of an old down building and kind of sifting through it or filtering through it. Sometimes it's digging into an old privy or an old trash pit or something. And so metal
Oh, yeah.
detecting is just it's one of the tools. Now, having said that, I really have been watching more guys like you and Brian and then even a few of the bigger ones like the Aqua Chigger and stuff. And as
Yeah.
I've watched, I've really realized that there's a lot more potential to the metal detecting piece of it, I think, than I've ever really realized. And I'm starting to have more interest in getting a little bit better equipment and doing a little more of that metal detecting. What I really need to do is I need to spend some more time, like you and I've talked about. We really need to meet up. I need to spend some more time around people like you that are better at that piece of it. And
Well, and vice versa. I mean, we can learn from each other. You've got a lot of really good knowledge. You're the type of person that if things happen in this country the way we kind of think things might go, you're going to be one of the survivors. You know, you're going to be one of those guys that has that knowledge that you can get by. And I mean, you've just got that outdoor experience. And I grew up with that kind of stuff too, always out there hunting, fishing, trapping. Um, you know, I've learned a lot about the habitat and the habits of animals and all kinds of stuff. But I was telling people before you hopped on here that watching your videos, you're pretty hardcore. I mean, you get out there, it doesn't matter if it's below zero and snowing and you got a foot of snow on the ground, or you're out there year round. And
yeah,
a lot of people are not willing to do that.
yeah, no, and I use the different times a year for different things. Like my main love is the history and exploring the historical sites and everything, which is a little more difficult to do in the wintertime. So the wintertime I use more for covering ground and exploring and finding the areas that kind of narrowing down those areas where there were centers of activity. And then also that's my time to kind of more hone my skills and put gear to the test, stuff like that. I mean, one thing that's always in the back of my mind, especially given the fact that a lot of times I'm solo, in really, and I don't know if you can really tell this from my videos, but I really am in some of the most remote places
Oh
that
yeah.
it's even possible to get to anymore. I mean, there's places where if stuff goes south out there, I might be more than a day's walk to get out. I might feasibly have to spend a couple nights. So one thing I'm always thinking about is keeping myself in decent enough condition and a decent enough level of skill that I can extract myself if things go bad, if things go sideways out there, if my rig breaks down or whatever the case may be. And so the
So
wintertime,
how does that work, Casey? Is it,
yeah, go
you
ahead.
talk about, keeping yourself in good enough shape for that and stuff? Is that, you talking like, just hiking and jogging, or do you go to the gym and stuff, or?
I do not go to the gym. In fact,
I don't either,
I'm
but I
gonna
show it.
I'm gonna admit this here and probably get a lot of flack for it, but one of my least favorite things to do in the entire world that I can think of would be to walk into a gym and spend 45 minutes or an hour working out in one spot. But yeah, it's just like I try to walk. And I keep it simple, I don't get too wrapped around the axle about it, but I try to walk a little bit every day, whether that's step out of my office for 20 minutes or something and go for a walk in the middle of the day, or go for a walk, a few blocks around my house. Again, I don't get too wrapped around the axle about it. And then, like, I do quite a bit of hiking on the weekends when I'm out there. And there's a certain amount of activity just setting up your camp and gathering firewood and all that kind of stuff. So mainly for me, it's just putting a little bit more effort into staying active, and just making sure that I try not to and I oversimplify a lot of things, but what I try to do is I try not to let a day go by that I don't break out in a sweat at some point in the day.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my that's the Coyote Works fitness routine. And I mean, I'm carrying a few extra pounds around the middle, so it's it's probably not the most recommended one, but it's working.
You guys, we're talking with Kaiser right now, and we just had a question come through the chat if you had a YouTube channel, and yes, he does. It's called Coyote Works on YouTube. Very, very interesting and entertaining channel there. Very informative too. Yeah, you're talking about, you've made it a goal to, kind of walk every day. I did that during the winter. I walked to the refrigerator and I walked back to the couch and,
well, that's something.
Oh, but yeah, you guys, you're going to want to go check out his channel over there, Coyote Works. Very, very good channel. Like I say, it's been, if I start watching that in the evening, I find myself staying awake and going to sleep probably about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning or something, and it's just,
well, that's Larry, that's really cool to hear that, because that's really the big driver and passion for me in the channel is just, like you mentioned earlier, at some point, I started to really realize that I am having a little bit of a unique experience out there. And I recognize that I'm grateful to be in a position in life where I can do the kinds of things that I do, as far as having the flexibility and the time and stuff like that. And so, the thing that just makes me happier than anything is knowing that there are other people that do really appreciate that and enjoy it. And that's the big driver for me.
You bet. No, I look at your channel and it looks like you have grown that channel really well. It looks like you've got I don't remember the amount of subscribers you have, but it inspires me to keep going, because to keep going and reaching goals like you've reached, but no, that's very interesting. And I do hope that you and Brian and I can get together. It sounds like we may be having an opportunity at a ghost town later on this, maybe in May or something like that.
Yeah,
that set up.
Sounds really interesting. Yeah, that'll be really fun. And I would say, Larry, it's one thing I really appreciate about you and your channel is I think that you appear to be doing what you enjoy to be doing, and you can tell you get enjoyment out of the things you find out there metal detecting. And I think that's been one thing that I think has proven to end up being really good for me, is I've just kind of stayed true to to my passion and what I love in my channel. And so what you get on my channel is you really get a little bit of all the things that I do. So there's a, kind of a little bit of prepperness, a little bit of survival, but those are aspects of what I enjoy and what I believe are important in life and everything. And I see the same thing about your channel. And I think the cool thing about that is that channels like ours won't necessarily grow fast. We don't do funny cat videos or, or whatever.
Yeah.
But one thing I think is really cool about that, and I see the same thing happen with you, is like our audiences really, we connect really well with our audiences, and they connect, we're all connected by a strong interest in what we're doing. And I think that's really cool. And even though that means that, we're not flash in the pan, growing fast, things like that. But we're growing with people like Jackie and Sean Squatch and some of these people, that they've become my friends. They've been, I connected with them through YouTube. Now, some of those people, Jackie, a couple of years now, way back in Minnesota. Someday I'll get out there and visit with her. We'll go camping or something. And Sean and some of these people, Sean, I've now known for like 7 or 8 years. I met him in the first year or two that I was doing a channel, and that's really cool. A good number of my friends today are actually people that I've met through the channel. And
yeah. Oh, it's awesome. I mean, I've made some great friends through this YouTube adventure, it is a, like you say, that interaction there. And I can't speak for the overlanding community, but I can speak for the metal detecting community and say that is a very tight knit community. And so you just meet people, and pretty soon you feel like you've known them forever, and you just hope to meet them face to face, But no, I get a feeling that's probably the same type of a deal with the overlanding community as well.
Yeah, definitely. I just see a comment up there from Sarah, and she's teasing me about burning off all my calories with the cold brew. But Sarah and Jamie, I met them. I had a group, just an open invite group trip, and they came in, I think, like a 1972, an old Ford pickup truck, and they had like a problem with the gas line and everything. And I gave them some gas, but we just hit it off. I think Sarah cooked like badger and jackrabbit for us around the fire on that trip. And then since then we've been on other trips together, and very tight knit community. Same deal. I think it's something about the outdoors, something about the outdoors or outdoor related activities that I think really connects people.
I think it's just real, and the people that go along with it are real, I don't know. It's just down to earth, and not a lot of hoopla that goes with that kind of stuff, really.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think Mother Nature, I always feel like, has a way of humbling people and sorting through the BS, And so I think if you spend very much time in the outdoors, one of the things that happens is you become a little bit more humble as a person. And
yeah, you bet. Now, this world is much bigger than our own self here, but especially out there in the outdoors, you get away from the concrete, the man-made concrete and everything else, and get out there in nature and God's creation. It's just, it's hard to it's hard to describe the feeling, just a peace, and I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so like I said, you get out there. Sorry about the shaking the camera there. I got kind of an unstable table here, but you get out there, and I can see from some of your drone footage and stuff like that, and you do some long shots out there that really looks across the country in there. And I may not be able to see back behind where you came from, but it does look like you've really gotten out there a ways. Have you ever gotten stranded out there?
I have a couple of times. Yeah, I think, there's been about 3 times that I've gotten stranded someplace real remote. One of the more infamous instances is I actually, and this happened on my channel, I was out on a trip. I'd been doing some exploring, and I got about halfway through the trip towards the evening, and the rig that I was driving, the Jeep that I was driving at the time, caught on fire, and that
Oh, I
stranded
saw
me.
that.
Yeah,
I
that
saw you had
stranded
a
me.
video on that.
Yep, yep. So that stranded me like 25 miles or something off of a paved road back there. So there was that experience. And then I got myself stuck one time. And that was probably a similar amount of miles, but the issue there was the country was a lot rougher. So my hike out of there ended up being a little bit tougher because I had a lot of pretty steep terrain to navigate and everything. And then one other time I was actually in Africa on this other time, and we got out of radio contact and got stranded out in Namibia, out in the out in the, I don't even know what the name of the desert is, the Kalahari Desert. Yeah, it was actually a part of the Kalahari Desert. And
Wow.
had a pretty
So
good.
what took you out that way? What took you to Africa?
Well, I had met a friend there years and years ago, and well, I had actually met him here in the United States, and but he lived in South Africa, and he was into hunting and safaring and stuff like that. So I ended up over the years spending quite a bit of time with him, and even we had some kind of minor business, nothing too spectacular, but we had some kind of minor business dealings and stuff together. So I went back and forth to those Southern African countries a couple of times a year for a number of years, and spent a lot of time in the bush there.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. You've been around then. I mean, so you were you born in Oregon?
I was actually born in Washington, up north of Seattle and Bellingham,
Okay.
but we moved down to Oregon, to Central Oregon, when I was relatively young. And then we, had a little piece of property, I guess you'd kind of call it a farm ranch type of a deal, little piece of property out of town, about 10 miles out of town. And the closest town was the town that I've now moved back to and live in today, which is Prineville, which now is about 10,000 people, but at the time was like, I think less than 3,000 people. So we lived 10 miles outside of a town that had a population of 3,000 people.
It looks like beautiful country, that high desert country.
Yeah.
And I like that high desert country. You got your sage and some ponderosa pines and stuff like that. But yeah, my wife is familiar with that town that you live in. She's also from Oregon, and
Oh.
but she's familiar with that area. She used to go there every weekend, I guess. And
Oh.
but I've never been through there personally. But no, that's good looking country there. So
Yeah.
a lot of history out there. I'm seeing the old homesteads and wagon roads and stuff like that you're showing on your channel. And I mean, it's just like we're talking what, 1850s, 1860s.
Yeah, some of the 1845 was some of the earlier organized wagon trains that came into the area. That would have been like the Lost Meek wagon train and the Elliott Party and some of those earlier ones. And actually, there was a cutoff route that came down through where I live. I mean, ultimately, a couple of different cutoff routes, but the Oregon Trail originally kind of connected in a little north, like up around the Columbia River, and went down the Columbia to kind of by where Portland, the Dalles, then Portland and Astoria, kind of down that area. But in later years, there was a cutoff trail that cut off like around Vail and that area and came through Central Oregon. So there were a number of different wagon train routes that got established through this area. And then during the military campaigns, where they were eradicating the natives from the area and rounding them up and going through the last of the Indian wars and everything here, there were some pretty significant cavalry supply routes established through the area that also, back in those days, any kind of a route got used by multiple different purposes. And
Sure.
They got used as migration routes for wagon trains coming through the area, for local traffic, and a lot of them were originally established as military supply routes that ran supplies from like the Dalles and Portland. I see Brent on there. Oh yeah, Brent said he's visiting a homestead outside Brothers, Oregon. Oh,
Yeah.
in late April. Okay, not too far from here, but
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, Larry, there's a lot of history, and Primeville, the town that I live in now, is one of the earliest, wealthiest communities in Central Oregon. In fact, at one point they made a brief bid for the capital, and they were the largest community and kind of the trade capital, the cattle empire and everything of Central Oregon. So yeah, there's a lot of pretty cool history. We had the cattle and sheep wars, the vigilante era, all of that kind of old west
Yeah.
stuff right here.
No, that's awesome. And it, like I say, every time I look at one of your videos, like you're always going to some place like, I want to detect there.
Yeah.
So, but no, so what through your overlanding experience and out there searching for these, for history, basically, what do you think would be your most memorable experience out there?
Oh man, that's so. There's one piece of country that I really like, way down deep in the southeastern corner of the state, and it's some of the most remote country. I would say a couple of my trips through there, because I found some of the most intact old homesteads in the most well preserved condition down there, that you just know not very many people ever get to see. And it's really rough country. And for example, well, actually, I don't know if Sarah's still on here, but Sarah and Jamie and I went on a trip through there where we were 250 miles from the point that we left the pavement to the point that we got back on the pavement. So we did 250 miles in 3 nights and 4 days. And I think for the first 3 days of the trip, I don't think we ever saw another vehicle that wasn't with us. I think there were 4 vehicles. We were caravanning together, 4 vehicles in our party, and that was it. I don't think for the first 4 days we ever saw another person that wasn't in our party. And
Yeah, that's what I like about that stuff is, you're out there and you're getting away from the everyday rat race, but no, it's very interesting what you do. Now I see you use a drone in some of your footage.
yep.
That's one thing I've kind of been interested in doing, but I had a drone and I was horrible at flying that thing. I am no good at that. I ended up selling it, saying, nah, I'm just going to destroy this thing and it's not going to do me any good. I couldn't even get any footage out of it. But I've got a friend who knows how to fly a drone, and as a matter of fact, we're going to be hunting a new permission that I got just the other day. It's an 1873 ranch, and so she's going to be taking some drone footage and stuff. But so I was talking with Brian about this, and he said that you actually use like 3 pieces of equipment to film your videos with. Is that right?
I do, yeah. A lot of times, my standard kind of filming setup now is I'll have 2 GoPro cameras. One I'll kind of keep mounted inside my Jeep. I do a lot of narration while I'm traveling from spot to spot, so I'll do those clips. So I have one kind of mounted on my dash, and then one GoPro that is kind of my running and gunning camera, if you will. It's the one that when I jump out of the Jeep to go explore something, I grab it. And then I've got kind of my main camera that I can set on a tripod to do a lot of my shots around camp and stuff. And then, of course, I've got the drone. And then, because I'm still kind of an amateur YouTuber, right? And I'm definitely not a professional filmer at all. I still am forever like getting excited, jumping out of the Jeep to run out and look at something, and I forget to bring a camera with me. So I end up filming a lot of stuff with my phone too, because that just happens to be what I have in my pocket. So
yeah, I do that too. I just got a GoPro here. Well, it's been last year. I got a GoPro, and I use my phone and the GoPro for filming. But yeah, I find it kind of it becomes more difficult the more devices you use for filming. Becomes more difficult in the editing process.
Absolutely. And I think the way that the kind of videos I do, like I really like to produce like what I call kind of like feature length videos, like I think about it, and I get that I don't always accomplish this, but my what I really want to do is I want to create videos that somebody feels like they're sitting down and watching a show, you know, that they can feel like they're a part of the adventure and kind of be there from beginning to end. And a lot of times how my trips go is I have kind of a general plan, but what happens is I'm always exploring, so I don't always know what the trip's going to end up being. And what
Right.
I try to do is make it feel like, because this really is the way it is I'm essentially filming live along the way as things unfold, right? So
You bet.
theoretically, as you guys watch the video, you're sort of discovering the trip in the same sequence and you know, as I am. So really, that's kind of my goal, is to try to give you guys a little taste of the same experience that I had on that trip.
Yep.
So I film a lot along the way, and then when I get home, so the downside of that is, though, it's hard to have a really concise plan of what I'm going to film, which would make editing a lot easier. So
Yes.
instead, I get home, and the first step is really going through a lot of footage off of those, you know, 3, 4, sometimes even 5 different devices, and that is really time consuming. So
Yeah.
that's the downside, is I'm not one of those channels that cranks out a lot of content. You know, I'm lucky if I can just steadily put out 1 to 2, you know, 40, 45-minute videos a month.
Yeah. 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 I wondered about that. I mean, I try to put out a video once a week. You know, and with my metal detecting, I can do that. As
Yeah.
long as I'm finding stuff, you know, sometimes it's tough. I mean, I've been to the point where some of the places I go to, I'm just not finding anything that's of interest, and people don't want to really watch me digging nails or something, you know. But if I find, you know, some good pieces of history, whether it be relics or old coins or something like that, you know, and some of it, you know, is just the scenery, you know, in the area that you're hunting, you know.
Yeah.
But no, you do a great job of taking people and showing them, you know, the adventure. There's almost like real time adventure the way you present your videos, and I like that. I think that's why, you know, like I say, I stay up late watching your videos, and once one is done, it's like I'm tired, but I want to watch another one, you know. So so that's great. No, I don't know. I just I'm envious of the country you live in. I live in some pretty nice country here, but I really like that country you have down there. But
It really is. You picked up on it a little bit, but one of the things that's really neat about this area is, like, from my house, you know, I kind of 10 minutes one direction, I'm up into the Ochco Mountains, up into Ponderosa Pine Forests, and even, you know, get up, you know, another 30 minutes and I'm up in the crest of the Ochco's, high prairies, high, you know, Doug fir forests, thick, dense timber, cut canyons, you know, all that. So that's kind of one direction. I go another direction and I'm juniper highlands, you know, kind of your real traditional high desert. Then I even go another direction and a little bit further, and I can get into sand dunes and dry lake beds and playa. So the diversity that I have access to living here is really cool. And it's one of the things that you know, every once in a while I really get a hankering to, like, go explore other states and stuff like that. And I do from time to time, because I always enjoy anything new. But there's always that part of me that's like, man, I've been exploring central and southeastern Oregon my entire life. And if I keep going at the rate I'm going, I'll still never see all of it by the end. You know, I'll
oh
never
yeah,
get to every canyon, every hill, you know, I'm never going to walk across every homestead site, every Native American campsite, every mile of wagon trail, or, you know, it's just, there's too much of it. I'm never going to get all of it. So,
right, right. So Brent just left a comment here. He was answering somebody in the chat, but he says depends on which land you're on, federal, state, county, or private. Can be confusing, but there are maps and mapping apps that will help ID where you want to go. And that brought a question to my mind, is how you research these sites. How is it that you come across um, you know, such history? Are you searching old maps, or is it online, or are you using old maps from the county, or how's that work?
Well, so most of my research starts with just reading local history books, like autobiographies of sort of, famous or semi-famous people here. I just got done reading a book called The Triangle Outfit that was about this early ranching family that settled in the area. But in the course of reading that book, it talked about like where they drove their cattle to. And like there was this one chapter in the book that was talking about they drove their cattle up to this one prairie area, and this book is written by one of the kids who died 30 years ago or something like that, whatever the case may be. But she talks about how when they would get to these prairies where they grazed their cattle in the summer, that a lot of times the Indians would be there gathering roots and bulbs and stuff. It was one of their gathering grounds. So like there was a name of kind of some of those prairies in there. And then I had that piece of tidbit that talked about how there were Native Americans there, which told me that they must have been camped there, right? Which then led me to, now I can start looking on a map, looking at topographical maps and old map layers and saying, okay, where would it be logical for them to have camped or be traveling to or from? And then kind of the final step is, once I've done all that, is now to make a trip out there on the ground and look at it and say, okay, where, they had the same concerns in setting up a camp we do. Where were they protected somewhat from the environments? You don't want to be on the lowest spot, because that's where the coldest temperatures settle, and the inversion layers, trap your smoke down around your camp and stuff. So you want to be up a little higher. You want to be where there's a little bit of a breeze so you don't have as many mosquitoes and bugs. And so then you go out there and you find, okay, here's some good logical spots. And then you start walking the ground, and all of a sudden, oh, there's an obsidian flake on the ground. Oh, interesting. There's a little sign. There's a rock. And then pretty soon maybe you stumble across something like that, and,
Look at there.
And you say, oh, there's a little arrowhead or something. And so that's kind of my process. Starts with reading, stories and books about the history, and then that leads me into using the maps to find, anytime I can find, and I'm reading a book and they mention the name of a place, like that's my cue to go to my map layers and start looking for the name of that. It might be a story about some bank robbers that took off over the west shoulder of Bald Butte, So then there I go. I start looking on my map. Where's Bald Butte at? Where, look at that west slope. Well, gosh, if you were, running from the town of Mitchell with your saddlebags full of banknotes that you got from the stage stop or whatever, where would the logical route be that you'd be running? And so
I'm seeing your shelves back there in the background. You got some bottles and stuff back there, and I do the videos that I've been watching and stuff on your channel, you do find a lot of old history laying there on the ground and stuff. Have you ever ran across any? I know you explore a lot of stuff, and you went to explore an old well. You were going to magnet fish an old well one time, but there was a rattlesnake in there.
That one's on my list this spring. That's on my list for this spring to go back to. Yeah.
Oh, that was a great looking place. I take a metal detector there. That's got to be good.
And that one is the cool thing about that one is that's back on private land. And so no one has had access to that site. That homestead was occupied. It's not an extremely old one. It was occupied from like 1909 until like 1927. But there was, a family of, I think there was like five. There was a whole bunch of kids. There was like 5 girls and 6 boys, and the couple, that all lived there on that homestead. He was a successful. He eventually purchased like enough grain processing equipment that he would go out. Other surrounding places would hire him to go pull his horse-drawn combines and threshers and things like that and harvest their grain. So it was very successful. They had some nice events there. They had weddings there and reunions and things like that. So and it's untouched. It's miles and miles and miles back on private land no one's had access to. So that
It's
would
just
be a really
amazing
good
to go
one.
back to these places, just step back in time, and where you're
Yeah,
going. It's just the way that they saw it too. I mean, you're hearing what they heard because you're so far back in there. You're not hearing the traffic of the highway.
no,
You're not hearing kids screaming at the next school or whatever. It's peaceful, it's quiet,
yeah.
and you're just hearing the breeze, and the animals out there and stuff. And it's just, I love that's what's so addicting about it, I think.
Yeah, it is. And that's one thing that really keeps my imagination active out there, when I'm on that place like that and I'm all alone. And oh,
Yeah.
Jacqueline's asking to tell about a dragon brooch. So
Yeah.
don't let me forget that, Jackie. I'll talk about that in a minute. But for me, that I get out there, I kick around that homestead, and then a lot of times, I can't buy it. And so often, when I'm out there without all those distractions, like you mentioned, Larry, without, car noises and other people and everything, your mind just drifts to,
You
I
bet.
don't know, it's easy to just drift to what life was like for them back then in that place. And a lot of times, the thing that really speaks to me is just how harsh that environment is,
Yeah.
and how people were able to sustain life out there, and how they were able to, in a lot of cases, even find happiness and comfort and with so little relative to what we have today. It's hard for us to even imagine living in a situation where the only light, once it got dark, that you would ever have to work with would come from a flame. Like, you think
Yeah.
about that, and you just think about, we can turn on a switch and have all the light we need to read whatever we want or do whatever detailed task we want to do.
Hmm.
But imagine back then, when the brightest light they had was a candle or some kind of an oil burning lantern,
Right.
and think about what that limited you from being able to do once the sun went down. And so, those are the kinds of things I think about, and just how much different that was.
And my dad, he passed away just before Christmas last year, and I I got this lantern. My dad really liked to collect lanterns and stuff, and he had this old kerosene lantern. Well, I've got that lantern now, and I was out in the shop trying to organize my shop and stuff here a couple of weeks ago, and I hung that ladder up on an old double tree or single tree. I'm sorry, and just hung it by one of the hooks, and I lit it. It had some kerosene. I went ahead and lit it, and I was sitting there. I was thinking just about that. About back in the old days, that was your light, and not only that, but you could smell that kerosene burning. So you
Mm-hmm.
had that fume too, and uh, my son was out there with me, and he was like, "Don't we have to worry about carbon monoxide?" I said, "No, we got plenty of ventilation going here. We're okay."
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but there's a lot of different things back then. I mean, the smell of a wood stove, or if they had a wood stove, cook wood stove or a wood cook stove, kerosene, just everything was different. And like you say, now we just flip a switch and we take that for granted. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody panics, if there's a power outage or something's like, what do we do now?
Yeah, yeah. And I was
But
even thinking about, like, in the wintertime out there, even, I go out when it's, really cold. I think this year we haven't had much of a winter here, but I think my coldest night this year was somewhere around zero, maybe a couple of degrees below zero. But I think last winter I had like a -12 or a -19 degree night. But still, I have like modern sleeping bags that are rated down to, -20. And I have a heater that I can turn on inside of my tent to take the edge off. And, a lot of people look at that, and by today's terms, that seems pretty rough out there. But I think about, when you were out riding your cows or your fence line all day long in 1900, which had to be done whether it was -19 degrees or +40 degrees. So you went out and you did that all day long, and maybe, you were just working to keep your animals alive and keep some kind of water, thawed out that they could drink. and then you go back to the cabin at the end of the day and you don't have any warmth until you've gathered the firewood and built the fire. And the only warmth you have is to the degree that you work to keep that fire going, you know,
That's right.
just simple things like that. You think about like how uncomfortable it is if you fall asleep in your cabin that night and that fire goes out, and now, you know, you're crawling out of your couple of wool blankets when it's, you know, very quickly, probably, you know, the same temperature in your cabin as it is outside once that fire goes down.
Right, right. Well, we're going to get to Jacqueline's question here, but you guys, if you have any questions, here for Casey at Coyote Works, feel free to post them. I'll put them up, and I mean, he's got a real interesting YouTube channel here. The adventures he goes on are just amazing. So, but yeah, I want to hear about this dragon brooch here. How did that come about?
So I'll give you a little bit of background. So the video I'm working on right now that hopefully I'll finish this weekend is I'm on the hunt of this old whiskey still. And I found this old whiskey still site about 15 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, with a really good friend of mine. And we were hiking up in these rim rocks and we found this little cleft in the rim rock, and we walked back through it and it opened up, and there was an old busted up whiskey still, some old copper tubing, some boards, but it was an old still site. So that would have been from the Prohibition era around here. You know, it was some moonshiners whiskey still hidden up there.
Yeah.
Well, for whatever reason, we didn't explore it much, and we moved on. And we've gone back together to try to find it twice since then, and not been able to locate it. So a couple of weekends ago, the video that I'm working on right now, I went out to try to find it again. I don't want to spoil all the suspense about the video,
Sure.
but to make a long story short, I didn't find it on my own. I did have some other pretty interesting stuff happen, but so the next weekend I called that buddy of mine that we had originally found it together, and we hadn't been out in the desert together for a long time. And it was the coolest thing ever because we did so many trips together. But just for whatever reason, you know, life happens and you go your separate ways, and we haven't been together for a long time. So we decided to get together to go out and find that whiskey still. And he'd been thinking about it all these years too. So we headed out to go find that whiskey still. And at the very end of the day, we had maybe an hour or two left of light. We stumbled across this old homestead site. And as we're kind of modifying, figuring out what happened on the site, what we realized is that the homestead had burned to the ground. We started finding charcoal in the ground and the old nails. And then we started finding like conchos, and we found a couple of pieces of jewelry, like old chains and things. And
Really?
we're just kind of, and the ground was frozen. So I was using a pick to kind of break up a little bit of the surface. And then my buddy Tony was kind of sorting through it. And all of a sudden, he found that little dragon brooch right there, right on the surface. Well, doing a little research on it, it does appear as though it's a dragon brooch that is of, I think, Japanese origin, from what I can tell. It's kind of a Japanese design. So the mystery hasn't completely unfolded to us yet, but you know, that's the kind of stuff that's really fascinating to me. You know, how did a brooch from Japan get out in the middle of the Central Oregon desert, and then it, you know, end up in a home? What was the story behind that homestead burning down? You know, most of the homestead sites out here got abandoned, and the people didn't have much to begin with, but when they abandoned the homestead, they took everything with them.
Yeah.
So this homestead, based on what we were finding, a lot of buckles, a lot of buttons, a lot of furniture tacks and hinges and things like that, it really appears as though this homestead burned when all the stuff was in it. And then,
Wow.
and that's why, you know, things like that brooch was there. And then that's the homestead that I found this old, I'm going to figure out where my camera is here, where I found.
Now, is that an inkwell?
It's an old inkwell, an old purple glass, manganese glass inkwell that I found there too. So they have.
What does that date at? What would you say that dates back to?
You know, as near as I can tell, based on the embossing on the bottom of this and everything, this was made from like 1890 to like 1920.
Probably.
So, anywhere in that range. But you find things like that, like the brooch and the inkwell, and that almost indicates like more people that had some means. Like a lot of those, homesteaders out there, or around this country. I don't know if this is where your name came from, Larry, but what they call sodbusters around here, is people who are trying to break up and till the ground to plant some subsistence crops in.
Yeah.
A lot of them didn't have items like that. They didn't have extra things like this. Everything they owned was a tool or a piece of clothing,
right.
something that had a purpose. So it's really interesting that on that particular homestead site, that brooch and little piece of a silver chain and that inkwell and just some of the stuff we're finding. So that's another one of those places that it'll be really neat to go back and metal detect
Absolutely.
in the spring and see what else we can find there.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that video. Yeah, you bet. So
Yeah.
you said that looked like Japanese origin, but I mean, it would make more sense if it was Chinese, because the Chinese were here for mining and plus helping build the railroads and stuff like that. But it does leave a question mark if it's Japanese.
Yeah, and it could be, Larry. It could be Chinese too. It just what I think it was definitely an Asian design, and the figurine, that dragon, and as I was searching for dragon brooches and the era and everything, I think actually somebody left a comment on the picture and said they thought it was Japanese. Yeah, I see Roger threw a comment up there, but someone was educated if they were writing. And yeah, that's true. That's another, just another interesting, like the only person that would have had an inkwell out there would have been someone who knew how to write, who had that level of education. But who knows, maybe they were a school teacher, but maybe they were someone that had traveled. Maybe they came from the San Francisco gold fields where there were a lot of Chinese workers, and that's where they got the brooch. And I don't know, that's the stuff that just keeps me awake or puts me to sleep at night thinking about, one of the two.
Yeah, there's always, whether it be the type of treasure hunting you're doing or metal detecting, there's always I don't know, more question marks than there are answers every time.
Yeah, definitely.
Very rarely do you come across answers. Last year I was metal detecting at a ghost town, and I found this little, I don't have it now because I sent it back to a family member, but from 1930, it was a key tag. It was a brass key tag, and it had the name Joy Eastman on it, and it said 1930, and then it said Craigmont, Idaho, which is not where I was hunting, but it wasn't too far from there.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I talked with a man that grew up there as a small child. He lived in that ghost town, and he had a pretty good memory about the things that took place there. And I asked him, I said, does the name Joy Eastman ring any bells? He said, oh yeah. He said, I said, I thought it was a woman. He says, oh no. He says, that was a man. He said he was a really great horse trainer, and he was a veteran, World War I, World War II veteran. And it was just, I said, well, I found this. And he looked at that. He said, that is amazing. He says, I actually know some of the family members of, descendants of that man. And I said, I would love to make contact and get this back to him, So I contacted one of the nieces, I think it was. Yeah, it was one of the nieces. And she told me the story, that she really didn't know him personally, and didn't, she'd met him and stuff, but really didn't have that much information on him, didn't really have a closeness there, but her sister did. So I ended up sending the piece to her. She lives in Boise, and she really appreciated that. And they told me the man He ended up getting shot and killed in I don't know, some sort of a dispute, but very rarely do you come up with those kind of, you get the total history of what you find. Most of the time it's like, I wonder how, or I wonder why, but no, that's really interesting. But
yeah, I think about it like a lot of times it's like if you had a book of a story, but the only thing you had was like every 13th page or every 20th page, and that's what you get, or you get these little pages out of the story, but you're still missing all this other stuff. But the more pages you can get, the more likelihood there is that you can kind of fill in those gaps in between. And so that, I really, there's something about that process that just really captures me, is that how can you get another piece of information, another page of that story that, you're never going to get the whole thing. And like you said, Larry, a lot of times every piece leads to more questions than it does answers, but
right.
But still, it's another page and another, and slowly but surely you're getting this better picture of the history, the life of that person or that family or that ghost town or that mine or whatever it is.
You bet. You bet. We had a comment here. Can you show a photo of that? Roger, if you're referring to the key tag, I do have a video on my YouTube channel. I believe it's under Ghost Town Hunts. You'll find it under the Ghost Town Hunts in my channel there. But if you're talking about Casey's find, then that's going to be an upcoming video here in the next, you said this coming week?
I'm hoping to have it done by the end of the weekend.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Jacqueline. I'm glad you're here. So yeah, when I met Casey here about a month ago, Brian, I don't know if Brian's still on here. Brian, are you still here? Get on it, Casey. Get on it, Casey. You got people saying we want to see that video. So, okay, yeah. Are there books, etc., that help you to ID? That's kind of what I end up doing is I go to Facebook. There's a thing, and I don't know if you're familiar with this Facebook group, but it's called ID Me. And so you can post finds on there, and people who research stuff will go on and say, yeah, that's such and such, and they can give you an idea or tell you where you can find the how to research where that item came from or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I've had people help me identify finds that I didn't know what they were on that group. So it's called ID Me on Facebook. Might be something that you can check out. Maybe put your that brooch on there and see what somebody says about that or something.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. It is really amazing to me how often you can find stuff out about things just by like describing it in Google, like just old rimfire cartridge or whatever. It's amazing that how much information there is out there about stuff to me. That used
so tell
to be
me
so
about
hard,
your gear.
I remember years ago, Larry, and you probably remember this too. Like I remember when I was young and I'd find something really interesting out there. I mean, the only way you had to find out what it was go to the library and pour through old books on antiques, or ask people that you knew if anybody'd ever saw it. But that's one thing that's really changed, is the access to information that we have now.
Oh yeah, it's just right at your fingertips literally now. But so tell me about your gear. I know that you have a Jeep. And but for your overlanding, It probably took you a while to get set up the way you are.
Oh
You've
yeah.
got some great things going on as far as, I mean, even on one of your videos, you had somebody send you a reflector plate that was really neat.
Yep.
And
Yep. That's the that and that's the thing I would say is my gear is definitely, an evolution over, my lifetime of slowly refining it. And I think you brought up that fire reflective wall, and that's a buddy of mine, Mike, that lives up in Canada, MC Ranch Overland, designed that portable fire reflective wall. But that's a really good example of like, you'll see for the most part, a lot of my gear stays really consistent. I find the stuff that works and is good quality, and I tend to stick with it until something better or more innovative or really, but it has to really, my criteria for gear is it has to serve a purpose. It has to be good quality. It has to be something I can depend on. Because literally, and I know this sounds a little dramatic, but literally my gear is to a degree my lifeline out there in a lot of cases, So it has to be good, but like that fire reflective wall is an example of, all my life I've been making camp, and when I do a fire, I build a fire reflective wall, usually kind of a half moon around the backside of my fire. And that does two things. One is it helps to reflect a little bit of radiant heat back towards me. It also kind of helps keep the wind from stripping your heat away from you. And then it also draws the smoke up along that reflector wall and tends to help keep the smoke from coming back into your face as you're cooking or hovering around the fire for warmth. So, but
yeah,
that's something that usually always, I'll spend anywhere from 15 minutes to 30 minutes, maybe even 45 minutes, depending on what I have to work with, building a fire reflective wall out of natural materials. And then
yeah,
my buddy Mike comes up and builds one, and now I have one that folds up and fits in my Jeep, and now it's as easy as unzipping the bag, pulling it out. So that really
yeah,
was a game changer piece of gear. That my whole setup is kind of geared around trying to make camp setup and tear down as easy as possible. Because again, I want to spend my time out there exploring and searching and metal detecting and doing all those things. I don't want to spend my time setting up and tearing down camp and messing with gear. And I'm really busy in my life outside of that too. So I don't want to come home and then have to spend an entire day sorting and packing and cleaning stuff, and everything.
that's
So
right.
my whole setup's geared around giving me the ability to leave on a moment's notice and the ability to be able to set up and tear down my camp quickly in any weather condition, any time of day or night, darkness, daylight, whatever. So yeah, it's been a years and years process. What you're looking at today in my gear is really, things changing. I remember at one point, I had the ultimate setup, and it was a 1978 short wide box Chevy pickup with a canopy on the back and a military cot that I set up in the back and had a pad and a sleeping bag on it. I'd
Was
leave the
that
cot
the
set. What's
was that
that?
the Verlander that was referred to here?
Oh no, this was way before the Verlander, but
Okay.
at the time that was the easiest setup that I could come up with. And now they came out with rooftop tents, and so I was like, oh, that gives me the ability to have my tent and all my sleeping gear on the top of whatever vehicle I run. And so
Hmm.
my setup that I run mostly is like you mentioned, Larry, is I like an SUV configuration vehicle. I like Jeeps, but that's more for their off-road capability than anything. I like the Rubicons. They have locking differentials front and rear, disconnecting sway bars, heavy-duty axles, 411 gear ratio. A lot of my a lot of my country is really rocky, so being able
Yeah.
to really get down in those low gears and crawl over those rocky bouldery roads. So the Jeeps just work really well capability wise, but I like the idea of like an SUV configuration vehicle where I can keep most of my gear and equipment inside the vehicle, protected from the elements, protected from dust and everything. And then the rooftop tent on top is essentially my camper, my canopy. that houses all my bedding and everything. So I don't have that inside my vehicle, and it's easy to set up. I'm up off the ground. It's a little bit cleaner. You know, you get dealing, you can shake a little bit more of the dust and the mud off you before you get in your tent and everything. So it just works really well for me. But it's all about making it easy to set up, easy to tear down, and then highly functional gear that I can really depend on.
Yeah, no, it looks like a great setup. You know, you're out there, you know, by yourself. You need to be set up in a good way, and you set up in case anything happens. And I notice you know, you get out there and you're cooking outdoors. It doesn't matter if it's a snow blizzard. You're out there cooking and thinking, geez, this guy, you don't quit. It's got to be freezing his butt off out there, and he's out there cooking up some gourmet meal, you know, and people are sending you things, here, try this, you know, and you're cooking up different things. And yeah, you've got quite the ordeal going on there. That's awesome. But
yeah, you know, it's really interesting with the right kind of, you know, skill set and combination of gear. You know, it really, I think I was like in my 20s when weather just stopped being a factor, whether I was going to go or not. Now, the only thing that weather changes is where I might be able to get to or not, right? Like, obviously, you know, there's only so much snow you can drive through. Around here, there's usually periods of time in the spring when things get really muddy in certain areas. You just can't drive across the playas and the lake beds when they're all soft in the early spring. But that's really that's really it. Other than that, man, I plan on going, and I go. It doesn't matter what the weather is. I just go.
You know, some ADV with Roscoe commented that he cooked your top ramen soup, and he'll vouch for it that it's delicious. You know, I saw that episode too. You put shrimp or something in there, didn't you?
Yeah. A couple of eggs, some shrimp, and you can turn your top ramen into quite the gourmet little meal there.
Well, that's something you need,
Charles.
especially what's that?
That's my buddy Charles, ADV with Roscoe. We've actually met up a few times out there. Charles has a ADV with Roscoe. He has a YouTube channel too, and another example of a great guy that I met through YouTube. Had it not been for YouTube, I would have never met him.
Well, you guys, I know that there's some of you on here that are familiar with Casey and his YouTube channel, and some of you have met him and know him. And I'm going to put a link down into the chat box here, and I'm going to invite somebody on here that wants to, you know, share a story about Casey. Be careful what story. Yeah, we're going to get you in trouble here, Casey. So I'm going to put an invite link here. If somebody wants to come on, tell a story that, you know, maybe of an adventure that you went on with Casey, or, you know, any kind of interesting story, or just about your overlanding experience with him or something like that, feel free to click that link and I'll bring you on here. But no, that's awesome. I definitely want to get together, you know, sometime, maybe in May or something like that, if we're able to hook up. And yeah, Brian, if you want to, you can hop on. Did you get that link? It's just right up above there, right above your comment. There's that link if you want to hop on and talk about your adventure with Casey there. But yeah, I mean, it'd be good to get together. We got so much in common as far as our interests go and everything else. And, you know, maybe we could get out to an old ghost town and go metal detect or something.
Yeah, no, I think I'd really enjoy that, Larry. Yeah, I think that'd be good. Maybe even you, me, and Brian or something, and sounds like Brian's got a lead on a ghost town that we might all enjoy, or somewhere, you know, I mean, there's some neat areas kind of in between where you and I are too. And so maybe, you know, you get a little bit of a camp setup tuned up or something, and we meet out somewhere in between. Or
yeah, I'm set up with some camping gear and stuff. Oh, we got Sean Squatch coming on here. All right.
Oh yeah,
there's Sean Squatch. I'll be darned. Hey, how you doing, Sean?
What's up, brother?
Hey, how you doing?
Good,
Good
good.
to see you, man. Good to see you.
So are you an overlander?
Oh, I'm not an overlander. I'm getting some backspeed with the YouTube thing here, but Casey and I we met each other through bushcrafting.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And you know Casey now. Is that right?
Yeah,
Do you know
Sean was.
Casey? I
Yeah,
don't know if
Sean
he.
was Sean was one of the original one of the first group trips that I ever went on. Sean was one of the first guys that I'd ever actually met through YouTube and gone
Oh,
on a trip with. And this is something I'm going to embarrass him a little bit, but this is something that a lot of people may not know about Sean. But Sean is hands down probably the most masterful creator of delectable camp cuisine with cast iron. And I mean, Sean brings a setup to camp, Dutch ovens and
oh,
steel
really?
teepees, and he'll get 3, 4, 5 cast iron dishes going at the same time. And Sean used to come on trips where I think Sean spent the whole trip cooking for us, feeding us, and then doing all the cleanup from all the cooking.
I'll be darned. I'll be darned. Well, it sounds like I need to invite him on one of my adventures.
I
Definitely.
would say, like, right now there's a combo versus.
Your audio is breaking up a little bit there, Sean.
Yeah, I'm getting a little feedback from the channel. But adventurous Bronco is definitely he brought some stuff to the table when it came to camp cooking.
Okay, okay. Well, we have another guest here as well, and here's Brian. So now I know that Brian has also been on adventures with you too, Casey, or
Yeah.
at least one there. And you guys, I saw a video of you out in Oregon there adventuring. How you doing,
Can
Brian?
you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you bet. You bet. How you doing? Can you hear me, Brian? I don't think he's got my audio.
Uh-oh.
Doing good. I'm having a hard time hearing you guys on my phone. I'm not sure if you can hear me okay though.
Okay, yeah, I think it's a little bit delayed, but yeah, I can hear you okay. Sounds good. But so yeah, tell us about your trip with Casey there that you went on.
Let me try to connect with my laptop.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on my phone as well. I think that might be the issue. I'm on my phone.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, we'll see you in a bit. So, but anyway, yeah, I've got some questions I've written down here for you, Casey, because there were some things that I wanted to ask you about, and I'm trying to see what I got here. So tell me about your metal detecting as far as, I know that you do it a little bit, but I saw you go to I think it was an old gold mining town or something like that, an old ghost town that you found up in the mountains somewhere, and you did a little bit of metal detecting there, but you walked through and just kind of exploring that ghost town. That was really interesting. Have you found any good old coins or anything metal detecting out there?
I have, in fact, maybe in a minute. I should have grabbed a few of them, but I have a pretty decent little handful of silver coins that I found. I mean, one thing that I've noticed about the old homestead sites in particular is, they were pretty frugal and they didn't lose a lot of money or anything like that. But when they did, it was usually something pretty old, So I've actually found a decent amount of like late 1800s, early 1900s coins. Almost anytime you find a coin at one of those old homestead sites, it's going to be prior to 1920 for sure.
Yeah,
And,
you bet.
I think my oldest one is 1862 that I've found. So that's pretty cool. So I have found a decent handful of silver coins, a couple of $50, a couple of silver dollars, some barber dimes, some, some decent actually amount of old silver. A lot of it's worn, a lot of the coins, I find on those old homestead sites of, they're worn pretty flat, it's a lot of the, I don't know what you call it, like the design or whatever on them, they got carried around for a long time and passed on from one person to another. But there we go. And I, obviously, like everybody else, man, I love finding old coins. That's kind of the holy grail because they have dates on them and everything. But a lot of also what I really like about the metal detector is it's something that I'm able to use to locate old buildings, that have rotted into the ground or burned. I can use the metal detector to find the old nail beds. A lot of times I'll even use the metal detector when I'm just in an area where I think that cavalry could have camped or Native Americans. And, I'm looking for things like the old Spencer cartridges and the old straight wall cartridges from the
Is
old
that like 4570 there?
Yeah, I think so. I think it might even be like a 50 caliber Spencer cartridge or something from one of the old Spencer carbines. Yeah, I think so. I think it's
okay.
So that's for me, that's one thing that's really cool about the metal detectors. It gives me the ability to be able to just look below the surface, get those metal hits, and really hone in on where there was some activity.
Yeah, you bet. You bet.
I see we got Brian up.
Yeah, we got you now, Brian.
Yeah. Hold on a minute. Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
I hear you.
All right. Sorry, I had your video going and I was hearing like the old what you guys are talking about and then I can hear you now. So
yeah. So
that one.
So yeah, I watched a video a while back. Kind of tell me about your experience with Casey out there on that adventure you went with him that one time.
That was pretty fun. I was just getting out of one of my classes. I do carpentry, so I have classes up in Tangent. So I figured, on my last day, I would jet over to Casey's neck of the woods and maybe meet up with him and hang out for a day. And he took me out to a spot and a couple spots actually. It was really, really awesome seeing all the history out there and all the old homestead areas and some of the rock foundation or some of the rock walls where they had, bordered off parts of the land for what were they like, just cattle or sheep or livestock?
Huh. Yeah.
Is that what they use those rocks for, Casey?
Yeah, it was a couple of things. In some cases, it was just they cleared rocks out of the areas where they wanted to plant either gardens or like dry land. A lot of times it was dry land grain that they raised out there, mainly just to feed to their own livestock. So they would clear the rocks out of the areas, but then they would use them to build fence rows that would essentially become their fences too. So another one of those kind of dual purpose things. They had to clear the rocks out of the area, so might as well use them to create their fences out of too.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah, he showed me some old dumps out there, and it's just incredible. Like, man, it just seemed to go on forever. Just some of these local dumps that they used to use back in the day, and broken glass everywhere, and tin cans, and a bunch of old cool stuff out there. And yeah, it was a pretty awesome trip and really cool hanging out with him and everything. And
yeah,
so I can't wait to get together with you guys later. And yeah, I emailed that lady about that old ghost town and hasn't gotten back to me yet. So I'm gonna. She gave me her cell phone number, her home number. So I don't think she's trying to dodge my my email. I just trying to make sure that she actually did get it. So
yeah.
But it definitely seems like a really awesome possibility, and it's all on private land. So it's all fenced off, and I'm pretty positive nobody's ever detected it or really stepped foot on that property. So
yeah, well, that's awesome. That's awesome. No, I'm looking forward to getting to meeting you guys in person and you know, telling some stories around the campfire or something, you know.
Yeah.
But no, it's you guys again. We're talking with Casey Kaiser from Coyote Works. On his YouTube channel is called Coyote Works. He does overlanding, treasure hunting, adventures, just out there seeking old paths of the past, you know, and the history that he discovers is just amazing. I mean, you know, you're coming across old wagon roads where the rocks are piled up on the sides, you know, and I see you jump out of the Jeep and head over and say, I see remnants of an old road or something, you know, and it's just really interesting. And he finds the old bottles and stuff laying there along these old historical areas and old homesteads and rattlesnakes. I see you find bobcat tracks out there in the snow and stuff, you know, it's but he really takes you along on the adventure as if you were there. And that's what I really like about his channel. It's just like you're going on that adventure with Casey, you know, and you're experiencing, you know, the weather and the cold, you know, whatever it might be, and just the exploration of the area that he's at, the discovery of history. And that's really neat. I really enjoy it. So you guys need to check out his YouTube channel. It's called Coyote Works. And I think that if you're going to start watching his videos, start watching them earlier in the day, because otherwise they keep you up as if like they do me, and you don't get no sleep at night. So, but
I
yeah,
started watching Casey probably about 3 years ago or maybe more. I had an old coworker. I used to be a meat cutter, and he was telling me about his channel. And every time I went on my lunch break, and I would always watch Casey's videos and waiting for new ones to come out and everything. And they just they're super addicting. So,
well, that's
yeah,
really
they are.
really cool.
Absolutely.
It's really cool to hear you guys say that, you know. And I was telling Larry earlier that you know, that's always been kind of my passion, is to try and share that experience that I'm having out there. And you know, like I've said before, I'm definitely not a professional. I'm, you know, self-taught, and I think I've gotten better at filming and kind of capturing. But my whole thing is, I really, you know, I'm just in my passion is to try to share a little bit of that experience that I'm having, so that you guys can experience it in the same way, the people that watch my videos, you know. And I think that over the years, I've just really realized that my style of exploring and camping and overlanding and history hunting out there is somewhat unique, in the sense that, and I've even had some struggles or some challenges over the years with like doing trips with other people, because what I find is that a lot of people are very destination oriented with their outdoor adventures or their outdoor experiences. So when a lot of people say we're going camping, what they picture in their mind is they've got a spot in mind that they're going to drive to, they're going to set up their camp, that's going to be their home base, and then that's where they're going to work out of for the next couple of days. And they're very oriented to a certain plan or a certain destination, or a combination of a specific plan and a specific destination. And what I've really learned over the years to really appreciate is to sort of let the trip guide where I'm going to go. So I'll do my research, and I'll have an idea that there was some historic activity that happened in this area, and I'm going to try to go find some trace of it. But it's going to be country I've never been to before. So I don't even know if the road that I think I'm going to take is going to get me to where I want to go, or if that road's going to be washed out and I'm going to have to drive around the other side of this ridge and through a different canyon to get there. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the weather's going to bring. I don't know what it's going to look like on the ground. You do all this research and all this map recon, what I call map recon, and your Google Earth stuff. But at the end of the day, until you get out there on the ground, you don't know exactly what you're going to come into. So for me, that's one of the things that I have learned to really love, is this sense of the unknown, this sense of, you know, when I'm driving out of town on a trip, it's like I'm excited for what might come. It's almost like there's a little bit of nervousness because I'm not exactly sure what is going to happen or unfold. Not like bad nervousness, but, you know, kind of an excited anticipation. And I've had that all my life. I've never lost that. And like, it's that kind of vibe that, what are we going to find, this exploring, what are, you know, I don't know what it's going to look like on the other side of that ridge. I know that somewhere through here there was an old wagon train road, and we're going to see if we can find some trace of it, but maybe a storm comes in and that road's too muddy, so now we can't get there. But then I happen to peek out the window and I see an old piece of metal laying over there, so I stop the Jeep and I jump out and I run, and I see that piece of metal, and well, why is this here? So then I'll start working my loops. What else do I find? You know, oh, here's an old can. Oh, here's a horseshoe. Oh, and then pretty soon now I'm completely diverted down a different track, but I found something totally unexpected that I didn't even know it was there. That homestead that Tony and I found, where we found the inkwell and the dragon brooch, that was a process of driving down a road and seeing what looked like a funny little line of rocks out there that didn't look natural. And we jumped out, and it turned out to be one of those fence rows. And then we saw some old broken china and glass in the ground. And then we saw something that looked like an old, maybe a privy pit, and had a couple of boards. And then we found this area where the ground was kind of darker, and that's where we started finding the charcoal and the buttons and everything. But no idea we were going to run into that. And that's what I want to kind of give people, if I can, through my videos, is that anticipation, that wondering, that exploration, that same kind of feeling. Because to me, that's the magic. That's what keeps me excited and eager to go again. I think if it ever got predictable, I think I would get bored with it, you know? And so it is that exploration, that adventure, that, you know, kind of my tagline has become always adventure. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be exciting and you're going to get stuck or you're going to go mud bogging or whatever. It just means adventure in the sense that you don't know specifically what is coming. You're discovering it along the way.
Exactly.
And
you're filming it as it comes. And that's what I think, that's your hook right there, because you know, it's not a scripted type of a deal, and neither is my channel. You know, we don't know what's coming out of the ground. We don't know what we're going to see, what we're going to find. It's the adventure. It's as it comes, you know, it's real.
Yeah.
And, and Jacqueline, just asked if I was from Oregon, and I'm not. I live in Idaho. I'm in northern Idaho here, in between Lewiston and Moscow. So I think, Casey, you're probably, I don't remember. I looked it up on Google Maps, and I think we're about 8 hours apart or something like that from where you live. And I think, Brian, you're about 6 or 8 hours, aren't you, Brian?
I'm 4 hours from Casey, and I think I'm I'd say about 10 hours from you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've been kind of talking back and forth, looking for some, you know, an opportunity to get together somewhere in the middle and just go and do an adventure out there for a few days and see what we could come up with. But
looking at a lot of spots in northeastern Oregon, and I've been coming up with a lot. I kind of wish I knew more of the history on it, but I know I found one like a town, and it was a kind of small sized town, but it doesn't exist anymore, and it's just all farm field now. So I thought that might be potentially a pretty cool spot to go check out. But
yeah. So Casey, you got a question here from Richard. Are you able to utilize LiDAR for researching places?
You know, I haven't yet, but it's interesting that he asked that question because I just kind of started doing a little bit of Googling and a little bit of research a lot of that technology, like ground penetrating radar and LiDAR and stuff, was what is, getting to be quite a bit less expensive now, and actually, starting to almost become in reach of the, it'd be more like, a group of us might have to get together to rent the equipment or something like that. But I think it would be really interesting to play around with that. The whole idea, and I think that's part of the fascination with metal detecting, is the idea that it gives us the ability to sort of look under the surface.
Mhm.
That whole idea of what's just hidden right underneath the ground that, so I think that's a pretty interesting deal, Richard. I'd love to learn more about that. And
Yeah, me too. I'm interested in that as well. I know Brian has been trying to help me out learning online research and stuff like that, as far as the online maps and stuff. And I'm just not real good at that yet, but the LiDAR has really got me really interested, because even if it's a timbered section of land, this LiDAR is allowing you to see through that,
yeah,
and I think that's going to open up a lot of opportunity.
yeah.
I know a lot of county websites, I think, or city websites have a lot of that LiDAR information on there. So that might be something to check out too.
I don't know if it's available for every place, but
not every spot.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because it seems like it would be really good at picking up like those anomalies, like those, unnatural, like things like those rock walls and, old foundations, that kind of thing. Seems like LiDAR would be a really good tool for
absolutely
looking over a wide area and picking out those anomalies like that.
Yeah, I think that'd be a really big tool for you.
Yeah. Or where Casey took me, that would be a great spot to use that on. Some of these anomalies, like that well that we thought we found, or not well, it was privy, something like that, and then that detects old road beds. Just a lot of different anomalies, like you were saying. But I was kind of getting back to where you were talking about exploring some of these old roads and just kind of winging it a little bit. And that's a lot of what I do here in Southern Oregon. Is I'll go on some of these back roads, look, especially early spring. I'll look for like daffodils or different like ivy. Ivy is not native to North America. It was brought over from England. So just different plants can help identify where things used to be. And that part of it, I think, is really fascinating. Or old orchards that are just overgrown, that you just don't notice until you.
Are you seeing any of that in Oregon there where you're at, Casey? Is it you seeing any difference in vegetation, flowers and stuff at homesteads?
There can be a little bit, like up in the mountains there. You can see some daffodils here and there, but a lot of the dry country, like where Brian and I were on our trip together, a lot of that country, once the people leave and stop watering the stuff, then whatever they've planted just dies, and the only thing that survives out there are the native desert plants. Now, one thing that you can find sometimes is like if they used any hay, like sometimes they brought in some non-native, like unfortunately, like cheatgrass or Medusa head. So a lot of times if you see cheatgrass or Medusa head out there, that's a sign that there was some grazing there, or some feed brought in at some point from somewhere else. But for the most part, there are a few varieties of those dryland grasses that can give you a little bit of a clue. But for the most part, you don't find things like the vines, the things like that. Every once in a while, a Russian olive tree, those were something that managed to survive out here in the desert country that they planted sometimes. And
is that a real like edible olive?
No, it's not. It's a good, I think they're a pretty like worthless tree. I think the main thing is they were something that survived in the desert, but they're thorny and really,
well, you think it was just put out there for shade? Because I know that, the homesteaders back then planted things for a purpose, and that had to either be shade or a windbreak or something edible.
Yeah, real common, Larry, is just something to provide some shade to help keep that homestead cool in the hottest months. And, so they would plant that on the, typically on the side of the homestead that was, that blocked the sun for the hottest part of the summer. And then also, a lot of times they'd plant several trees that were a little bit of a windbreak too. And
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you guys, again, check out Coyote Works on YouTube, and you're going to see some amazing adventures on there. Roger has been making some comments on here. Let's see. He said that I think he said that he goes up to Bonner's Ferry, and I used to go hunting up there. Let's see here. One of his favorite sites in Idaho is located by unusual vegetation in summer. Yeah, I've located some areas like that myself, and that's something you have to kind of train your eye to, because every day I think we're driving by something that, now instead of, I don't have to see an old homestead now to know that there is a place there, Now I can take a look and it may just be a grove of trees, and you go to that grove of trees and you realize, okay, there was a structure here, but I'm in wheat land here. We got a lot of wheat and farm fields and stuff around here. So you got all this wheat out there and open space. And then all of a sudden there's just a little grove of trees. Well, why was that grove of trees left there? So it's just kind of another clue, to try to find new leads to go detect or explore,
Yeah.
But
yeah, I tell you, Larry, you said something there that just really sparked a thought in my mind, which is, looking for those things that are out of place. And I think, for me, I found a lot of really cool pieces of history over the years just by driving those old roads, like, number one, out in this part of the country. And I think you mentioned this, Larry, or maybe you did, Brian, that, the homesteaders did very little that didn't have a purpose behind it. So if there's an old road out there, it exists for a reason, and it went someplace. It connected one homestead to another, or one homestead to a community, or it was a stage route. It existed for a reason. People didn't just have excess energy and time to do stuff without purpose. But you get familiar with what is natural in the environment, and then you look for anything that's out of place, like a shape, like rocks that are more in a row than like your typical rim rock or something, or like me, I can spot a piece of rusty metal 25 feet off of the road out my side window. And a lot of times, my trips are following a road that I've never followed before, looking for that can or that glint off of a piece of broken glass out there in the sagebrush or something. Hit the brakes, jump out of my Jeep, go out there. Okay, if there's one piece of broken glass laying there in the ground, why is it there?
Yep.
It came off of a bottle, right? So there's got to be more. And why was that bottle there?
Right.
Could be a bottle that somebody threw off of a wagon. I found this bottle here on a homestead not too long ago. This is an old crown top, but what's interesting about it is it says Astoria, Oregon on it.
Yeah, that's really neat.
So how did an old crown top, and it's got bubbles in it, and it's all kinds of,
that's old glass.
It's an old bottle, but how did this bottle that was made in Astoria, Oregon, early 1900s, make it out to a homestead, or out to, a road leading up to a homestead in the middle of the desert? And stuff like that. But that learning to notice anything that's a little bit out of place and investigate it further. Like, and it's funny, I'll have, people with me sometimes, and I'll be, tooling down a little 2-track rocky road out there, and all of a sudden I'll hit the brakes, put it in park, jump up. What are you doing? Whoever's with me, what are you doing? Well, I saw something, a lot of times it is just as simple as a little glint off of glass, or I saw a rusty can or something out there, but it's there for a reason. There's a story behind how it got there.
Right.
And maybe it's just that somebody 50 years ago driving down that road threw it out the window of their pickup truck.
Mhm.
But it also could have been somebody who was riding down the road on a buckboard that threw it out there. Or it could be that it's right by a homestead site. And so I've learned over the years to notice those things, but also to take the time to look deeper every time. And a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, maybe I don't find anything else, but it's that 10th time that I do that makes it worth it to go through those. It's just like digging holes, metal detecting, right? 9 out of 10 times, there's that pull tab, or there's that, piece of shotgun shot, or whatever it is down there.
Yeah.
For me, 22 shells are the bane of my existence, metal detecting. Like, for whatever it is about 22 shells, I'm convinced that it's a gold ring every time I hit on a 22 shell, and I cannot bring myself to not dig 22 shells. And
they come up really good.
Yeah.
Sean says, if you've never traveled with Casey, you will never know. I've hiked miles over the last 7 years because he saw something. He's got you on an exercise program there, Sean.
That's so true. Sean's been right there with me on a couple of those trips where, and actually one of the last times Sean and I were out together, we found a new homestead site for that exact reason, because I spotted a little something off in the distance. Hey, let's jump out and take a walk. I know there's got to be something out here. And that little something was another half mile before we found something else. But that was enough to keep us going for another half mile. And lo and behold, we eventually got to a little root cellar.
You really get out there and explore. Like, when I was with you that last time, I just see you stopping. I'm like, oh, we're stopping for something. And then he gets out and goes and, we're like, hey, I think I saw some rusty right there. And we look at it and he goes, all right, I'm going to go walk this direction. You go walk over here. And, he's just zigzagging back and forth. And he's super thorough on, what he's looking for and everything. And so.
Roger says, Jacqueline, the World War II dog tags on a keychain, that was in the roots of a tree. I tracked down the family and returned it to them. It was a very emotional experience. This exploration, what we do, I don't care if you're an overlander or a metal detectorist or just, you're just out for the adventure. The things that you can come across are just absolutely amazing. And it may not be monetary value, but you may find, like the piece of history that he returned to the family there. I found history that I've returned to family that's something personal, and it's rewarding. It is very rewarding to be able to do that, especially when you find something that's that old. That deal last year where I found that key tag, and it was from 1930, and I was able to return it to a niece of that man is long gone, deceased, and had been shot, killed. I was able to return that to the family, and they never would have seen that if it wasn't for a metal detectorist.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that's exploring and researching history and just getting out there and traveling the old paths and stuff like that. It's just awesome. I think what we do is, I can't think of a better hobby to have really than exploring the different tools we use to explore, but anyway, anybody have any questions for Casey here, and about his channel, about his equipment that he uses, anything like that? So
we must have done a really thorough job then, Larry and Brian.
Yeah. Casey, I know you said you used to hunt and stuff like that. Do you still hunt?
Not too much. I mean, I would. I'm not opposed to it. I just, over the years, kind of I think as I've gotten busier in other parts of my life, like, I've really kind of narrowed down the things that I do, and it really is kind of narrowed down to the history hunting and the overlanding and everything that goes along with that. And, and really enjoy my job. And it's pretty, I'm pretty dedicated to the community and everything too. And that, so, you know, between those two things, kind of over the year, like hunting, I enjoy, but I don't have the same level of passion for it that I do about, like, you know, finding another old homestead site or something like that.
Jacqueline says, I was overlanding last summer and found 3 bras on a tree out in the middle of nowhere. LOL, not a great find, but a find nonetheless. You never know what you're going to find out there. Oh,
they
man.
They actually have a tree out in just north of Bend where it's like covered in like tennis shoes and stuff like that. And it's crazy. I know, Casey, you've obviously seen it. You've been out there for years, but yeah, it's just crazy seeing that just out right off the highway.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that really comes to my mind when Jacqueline says that about the bras is, what's the story behind that?
Yeah, it makes you wonder. Makes you wonder. So maybe there was a hot spring nearby.
Right. I see Zach Troyer threw up a comment. You got a new subscriber, Casey. So thank you, Zach. I appreciate that. I hope you find something entertaining there. Hope you enjoy the videos, and say hi when you bounce over to my channel the next time.
Yeah. All right.
So do you have any prospects for a Jeep overlanding adventure this year, Casey?
Like a group one, Brian?
Yeah.
I would like to do something this spring now that, you know, we're kind of done with all of the COVID madness and everything that, you know, that everybody's been all wrapped around the axle about. Now that things have kind of settled down, I would like to do one this spring.
Yeah, it sounds awesome.
Jacqueline says they weren't mine, Sean. That's funny. Right. All right, you guys. Well, I'll tell you what. I don't see any more questions coming in here, but you know, Casey, I've really enjoyed this. I mean, I enjoy your channel that like nobody's business, and I look forward to your upcoming videos. I'm looking forward to seeing that brooch video. That's going to be neat. It's this kind of stuff that just gets my heart pumping, gets me all excited, and I want to go out and find. I'm just like a kid at heart, you know. I want to go find some treasure. There's got to be pirate treasure out there somewhere, you know. But no, I've got a lot of respect for you, the way that you go out there and brave the weather, and it doesn't matter what time of year it is. You're out there in the sub-zero temperatures and snow and everything else, and just pretty hardcore. I mean, but yeah, I have a lot of respect for that, and I appreciate you sharing that adventure with everybody, you know, on your channel. So again, you guys go to Coyote Works on YouTube and subscribe to Casey there, and you will be entertained with his channel. If you're not into this type of thing at all, I can tell you that. But well, and then also Brian's got the channel. Well, I'm gonna have a brain fart now.
Dirt Bandit Outdoors.
Dirt Bandit Outdoors. Dirt Bandit Outdoors. You check him out too, you guys. And if you haven't subscribed to Sodbuster's Metal Detecting, that's me. So I'd be happy to have you come check out my channel as well. And between the three of us, I think we can keep you guys pretty well on the adventure side of things. And eventually we're trying to work up a gathering where we can kind of do a get together with the three of us and possibly do a video of that, you know, and see what kind of adventure we could come up with there. But you guys will need to stay tuned for that. But again, I want to thank you, Casey. I really appreciate you setting aside the time to come and share this information and adventure with us.
Well, it's been my pleasure, Larry. I've really enjoyed getting to know you, and I had a lot of fun when you just kind of spontaneously let me jump in a couple of weeks ago, and then since then we've had some messages back and forth, and interestingly enough, you know, I'd been watching your videos, you know, well before that, and so it's been good to kind of get connected, and you know, just for my audience, Brian Larry, you know, good guys. Please do go over and support them too. And you'll see, it might take us a little bit to get it together. I mean, number one, we almost got to kind of wait till spring, but we'll get some kind of a collab together, and I bet we can do some cool stuff that people will really enjoy.
You bet.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll get out there and do a treasure dance of some sort or something. I don't know.
I'll make some fancy top ramen for you guys while we're on the trip.
Hey, that sounds good to me. If you take a look at me, you can't see my belly right now, but I've never turned down food, I don't think. As long as it resembled food.
Well, I don't know if any of you guys followed Jackie on Facebook, but she's been on a kick lately where she's sharing pictures of all the meals that she makes every evening. And I swear, every time I see one of those pictures, it makes me want to drive to Minnesota for dinner.
Jackie, well, Casey's been calling you Jackie, so I'm just going to say Jackie. If you'd like, hop on to my Facebook group also. You guys, I have Sodbusters Metal Detecting Facebook group. Hop on there as well. I always like to make new connections and see what other people are doing. I don't know if Jackie, does she have a YouTube channel, Casey?
Nope.
Okay.
Just but she's stuff that she's interested in. She's on there. She's around my channel. Usually, you know, leaves a comment, and she's there. You know, she keeps guys like Sean in line and stuff like that too while she's
Good
there.
deal.
So that's good.
Good deal. Well, yeah, you guys are all welcome. Just, you know, anybody who wants to hop on Sodbusters Metal Detecting Facebook page, and then check out our YouTube channels here. And all of us really like to see you guys, and we like to provide new adventures for you guys all the time. So you never know what we're going to come up with. But anyhow, all right, you guys, it's good to see you again, and I look forward to meeting up with you in the future. And I appreciate each and every one of you guys that showed up for the live stream here. It's been a good show. I've been entertained myself. I loved hearing about this. So
good. Well, I'll jump off of here, Larry. Thanks again for having me on. Really enjoyed it. And till the next time, Coyote Works out.
Sounds good. Take care, Casey. And you guys, if you are just stepping into this live stream, go ahead. There's going to be a replay, so feel free to search out that replay. If you missed part of the stream or something like that, you'll be able to pick up the rest of it later on. But anyway, thanks again. We appreciate you guys showing up. You guys are awesome, and I thank you guys for the super chats, keeping the channel going here. That's always a help. Thank you very much. And Brian, I appreciate you hopping on here too, buddy.
Yeah, no problem.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
But okay, well, you guys take care, and you have a great night. Stay safe and find some treasure.
Bye, guys.
Talk to you soon.